Welcome to the Maine Outdoor Enthusiast podcast. I'm Paul.
And I'm Mark.
So we're going to start this podcast off like everyone else's. We're going to talk about the weather.
Well, we can sum that up in one word.
A four-letter word.
No, three.
Sock.
Wet.
Yeah, wet. Wet and humid.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. 3 letters, wet.
It's been a rough start to the
Well,
summer.
It's been that way, Paul. May was dry, but June was, they said the wettest June in the last 20 years, and July has picked up where June left off.
Yeah.
Wet, rain, lots of rain.
every day.
Every
We
day.
got and the heavy downpours.
Yep.
So even on our fishing trip, they were calling for rain the whole time. Luckily, it didn't hold true.
Right, there were spotty showers here and there. Yeah.
But it still wasn't perfect weather.
Wasn't a washout.
Nope.
No.
So I think we're on what? Episode 9?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think
episode
so.
9.
Yep.
We're almost in double digits.
Yeah.
You know, I think I don't know if we talked about this before, but I think I read somewhere that 90% of podcasts don't make it past 50 episodes. I may have mentioned that.
Well, we got a little ways to
So
go then.
41 episodes to go.
Yeah. We got a long way to go.
Long ways to go.
Or somewhere to go.
At the rate we're going.
Yeah.
All right. So this week, per someone's request, we're going to talk about beginning fly fishing gear. So fly fishing gear that's good for beginners.
Yeah.
And fly fishing
How for someone to get started in the sport.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not, I think it gets overly complicated.
Yeah.
It's not a complicated thing. And I think especially gear wise,
Right.
there's so much gear on the market, so much gear you don't need
Yeah.
on the market. And you've talked about it before. We'll kind of go things here in sequential order, but just you've mentioned before about flies. When you first start out, you think you need every fly under the book,
Right.
or every fly out of the book. And I remember when I was early into my tying that I wanted to tie everything.
And we did.
Thought I needed every size, of
Yeah.
every possible pattern.
Yeah.
And you end up learning that you just use
You use
one or two flies.
You use
all the time.
very few flies, and that holds true, Paul. When we troll, you use the same fly
Yeah.
probably next year that you use this year.
Probably part of it is, we're creatures of habit,
Yeah.
kind of get comfortable with something.
Yeah.
But second, it's kind of really all you need for most situations.
Right.
90% of the time, you got just a few flies that'll do the trick. So
That'll work. Yeah.
So someone asked us to go over, beginner fly fishing gear. So we'll start right from rod, reel. Are you hungry?
Yeah. I just ate. So
Stomach's growling.
things are working.
That's good.
That is a good thing. Yeah.
It's going in the right direction.
Hopefully. It wasn't a few weeks ago, I'll tell you that.
Oh, you were sick?
Yeah, I had the
that's
had the
right.
norovirus there. Yeah. Yeah. I couldn't figure out whether I needed to kneel or sit. So
Sometimes
it was
it's
a
both.
dilemma. Yeah, no, both at the same for sure. That's where a bucket comes in handy.
That's right.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about some fly fishing gear. So we'll start with rods.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's a lot of marketing stuff out there, rod wise,
and you can spend a lot of money on
spend
it. And
thousands of
certainly a
bucks.
beginner's probably not going to plunk down $1,000 for a top end graphite fly rod, but
nor should they.
nor should they. They
Because-
can do it for the same thing for a lot less.
Because
for
I
sure.
mean, you're not gonna know what a good fly rod feels like until you get fishing a little bit.
Right.
You get a few
Right.
years under your belt, and so usually, I mean, what I recommend is someone obviously go with an outfit.
Right.
You can get there's some good outfits that are pretty cheap.
Yeah.
I wouldn't recommend going super cheap. And so my buddy Chris, when he first started, he bought, I think, the cheapest thing at Walmart. It was
Right.
it was a Martin.
I think your Uncle Mike did the same thing. He always called it his Berkeley cherry wood there.
And it's a good story because I think he spent $50.
Right.
That was rod, reel, line.
Yeah.
Made a full outfit. And I mean, it was super cheap, but he got a lot of use out of it.
Yeah.
And it served him well.
Yeah.
And I think he fished with that hard. He fell in love with fly fishing, used that hard for 2 years.
Yeah.
And then he upgraded after that. But I'd probably definitely recommend spending a little bit more, just because when you go super cheap And it's the same thing if you're learning anything. Like we did it with my daughter when she was learning guitar. If you go super cheap, it creates more barriers for them to learn. It's not fun to,
Right.
like a cheap,
And it's not going to be long before you're going to want to upgrade maybe a little bit. So start off with a good.
It's like with
good
her,
outfit.
a cheap guitar is, it's hard to push the strings down. It's not going to be enjoyable for her to try to learn. So try to get something obviously not top of the line, but something that makes it relatively or easier for a beginner to learn how to use,
to enjoy
the
instrument
instrument or their equipment. So don't go super cheap. See a lot of rods. There's different actions to them. So you're looking at fast action, medium action, slow action. And then the big thing with them all is the weight of the rod.
Right.
Which we'll kind of go over here in a minute. Everything has to match up. Not so much the reel. That's probably less important. But as far as having the correct weight line matched to the rod in order for it to perform the way it should. So just real quick, talking about actions of a fly rod. Fast action is what I fish with now. I love a fast action fly rod specifically because of the type of fishing that we do.
Yeah, pond fishing.
Fish a lot of small ponds. So fast action rod's going to come in handy with having to cast further, throws a tight loop, good in the wind.
Right.
So you can basically
you
plow
can drive the line into the wind. Yeah.
The downfalls of a fast action fly rod are there's less feel. It's not as good for a beginner. It takes kind of a unique casting stroke. You have to get used to that. There's less finesse. It doesn't have as good as a presentation.
Right.
As a what they would call a mid action or mid flex fly rod or a
slow action
fly rod. Less forgiving. So for a beginner, and I don't know if you disagree or not, but probably a medium action fly rod, kind of an all-around fly rod that kind of will get you into close areas if you're going to fish streams, ponds if you're going to fish ponds, a little more forgiving, kind of someone who's figuring out what their casting stroke is like. It's going to kind of help you find, exactly how because everyone has a little bit different casting stroke. And I know I've got some slower action rods, and I fish a fast action rod so much that I feel like I'm waiting forever for the rod to load. But it's just goes over time. That's what I've gotten used to. So for beginner, definitely go with I'd say medium action fly rod. As far as the lengths of those rods,
we use 9.
We use 9 foot.
We use there again for a pond. It gives you a little more distance and stuff, but maybe an 8.5 foot fly rod would be good for a beginner.
Good for beginner.
With a 5
smaller.
weight.
You've got one that's a 7.5 foot.
I do, but I use that for small streams.
Yeah, I mean you're not casting.
I wouldn't use it in the river, but we're in small streams and stuff. I use that. It's a lot of fun. 4 weight.
Yeah. So. As far as rods come in numerous sections. You can get 2-piece, 4-piece.
Back in the day, it was all 2-piece, and now with it's 4 and even more. I guess they can. Some of them are.
Yeah, I remember Orvis had one. It was just out actually. We were up in Labrador, and one of the guides had one there. I think it was a 7-piece.
Yeah, I knew there was one that with a lot more than 4 pieces, and
so it's easier to travel with.
Right, carried on a plane or whatever.
Yeah. So you got to kind of consider those.
That's the purpose of it.
But
travel rods.
Yeah.
So
I would probably do 8 foot, 8.5 foot.
Yeah.
Medium action.
Yeah.
2-piece rod. Now, as far as the weight of the rod, we fish for general purpose 5 weight.
5 weight would be
a good starting.
Maybe a 6 weight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is a good starting point.
Yeah.
It's kind of an all purpose. You basically can catch big fish. You can catch small fish with it. A lot of people like a 4 weight. I don't know. I like a 5 weight.
Yeah. Well, the 4 weight for there again, it would be for you wouldn't get as much distance with a 4 weight as you would a 5 weight, and be fishing in ponds. Sometimes we want a little more distance, so we opt for a 5 weight, and that determines too that 5 weight or 6 weight or 8 weight or 2 weight determines the weight of the fly rod, you know, that,
Yeah.
so
Yep.
you, it's a little easier to cast probably a lighter rod than it is, you know.
It is. So I don't know if I've ever talked to you about this, but funny story about that. I learned, and it was terrible, because I can remember I would take your little Fenwick HMG.
Right. Little 7.5
7.5 weight
for a 4 weight.
And I'd be like, Mike, I was like 7 or 8 years old.
Yeah.
You gave me this Fenwick glass rod, fiberglass rod.
Yeah.
It was about the diameter of my thumb.
And I still, the Fen glass. Yeah, I still have that rod. It's a good,
I can
good
remember.
rod.
Yes, I remember my little wrist though.
Yeah.
You
Total
cast that
different
for-
experience. Yeah.
My wrist would get so tired.
Yeah.
And you would hand me your rod, and
Yeah. It was so
like-
light.
oh my word,
Yeah.
it was night and day. So
Yeah.
that's a good example of, you know, have somewhat of a decent equipment.
Yeah.
Because that was hard for me to cast as a
Yeah.
7-year-old. So we get the rod narrowed down. We're looking at an 8-foot, 5-weight,
Yeah.
2-piece, medium action rod.
Yeah.
So if you're going to go for a reel, you know, you're looking at, you got to match the reel to the line in the rod. So you're going to go 5-weight, 6-weight. A lot of reels are kind of dual weight.
Right.
We'll say 5-6 or whatever on them. You've got standard arbor, mid arbor,
Yeah.
large arbor. That has to do with the size of the spool
Right.
that the line goes around. Larger the arbor, so larger the diameter of the spool.
Less
fast-
memory you're going to get in
less
your
memory.
Yeah, and quicker pickup when you reel it
and
in.
Quicker retrieve.
Yeah.
Probably most beginners aren't going to be slaying
No.
10-pound salmon that are stripping out.
Yeah.
line
Most
like
of the time
crazy.
we don't even put fish on reels with the way we fish.
No.
We just retrieve it.
Stripping
Hand
by
retrieve
hand.
it.
Oftentimes the reel is going to be just a placeholder for the line.
It's a storage place for the. It's probably of all the components, Paul. I think you know if you were going to save money, you want a good line. Will make a difference in
Yep.
your experience casting and a decent fly rod. But the reel is just for storing line, and it's to me it's the least important thing as far as the casting experience.
Unless
so.
you're getting into big fish that are going
Right.
to make big runs,
right,
And then
which
you start,
we generally don't.
no.
So
And then that's when you'll really take a good look at the drag system that's on
Right.
a reel. Disc
Yeah.
drag versus click pawl.
yeah,
Open face versus closed face.
Yeah.
You can use your hand to adjust
Right.
the drag on the
rim
fly.
drag. Yeah,
If it's an open face.
yeah,
I will say, so for the best bang for your buck, the Orvis Bat and Kill has always been
yeah.
a solid starter for
Right.
people. But again, buying an outfit comes with the reel.
Right.
You can always upgrade that later.
Yeah.
So yeah, click pawl, disc drag really doesn't matter unless you're
Right.
catching big fish. They're gonna be stripping out line. Other than that, starting out, I think the reel's just kind of a
Yeah, spring and pawl, like you say, and then if you're going to get a decent reel, you're going to get a disc drag and
drag.
stuff, and that you're going to pay more money for it.
open face.
Yeah.
Maybe a large arbor.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. But
Yeah.
you don't have to get too fancy on the reel. Line, on the other hand,
Yeah, you want a
is-
decent line.
You'd want a good
Yeah.
line. And again, all the outfits come with a line. And if you buy a decent outfit from Orvis, LL Bean, those places, you can get a beginner's.
Yeah, they're going to probably throw a middle of the line fly line in there with it.
It'll get you by.
Yeah,
One thing you want to consider is, so looking at line, is the line has to match the weight of the rod.
yeah.
So if you're fishing a 5-weight rod,
5-weight line.
5-weight fly line. For instance, if you go too heavy, it's going to overload the rod, especially once you start to get a little bit of line out.
Mm-hmm.
And it's almost like the rod gives away, almost like a wet noodle. It'll pile the line up out in front of you. It just doesn't have the backbone to throw that line out once
Right.
you get a little bit out there. I've done that before. I've got an 8-weight rod. And I've inadvertently, the reels are they're identical reels. Same Orvis Bat and Kill.
Right.
They're just slightly different sizes. You look on the back to see which one's which. And I've accidentally put an 8-weight line on my 5-weight. And you can tell once you get, I don't know,
Yeah.
25, 30 feet out, you're
Yeah.
It's not
Can't push it.
It's not working the way it should.
No.
So just a quick note. So if people are confused about the weight of a rod or the weight of the line, it's basically the weight of the first 30 feet of fly line. And it's kind of a standardized way that they've come up with to kind of match rods with line. Not to overcomplicate it, but yeah, the first 30 feet of the line is weighed, and then it's in grains that they come up with the weight. And they basically have a numerical system all the way through to kind of have some sort of standardized way of matching these things up. Tapers can be on fly line can be a complicated thing, I think, for people.
When I started out, the big thing at that time, everybody used double taper.
Yeah.
And now you don't see many of them. You know, most everything's a weight forward, and there are so many tapers that.
When you get into to weight forward lines, they've got all kinds of different, and I think a lot of it's marketing.
Yeah,
I don't know if even I don't want to say the intermediate, but even an advanced fly fisherman, I mean, I don't know if they're really going to be.
But double taper, it was really good for presentation.
Yeah,
it didn't cast the fly as far, but you could turn the fly line around and switch ends, and you could get double the life out of your fly line. That was
so just to clarify what tapers are on a fly line is you have your basic fly line, and then there's a body of the fly line that's going to be thicker,
right?
And where that's located on the fly line is going to affect how the fly line shoots out, how you can present the fly,
right?
How efficiently it goes out. So what they'll do is they'll have a section of the fly line. So with a double taper, it's basically the body's basically the entire fly line, and it tapers down on either end equally. So you've got a perfectly symmetrical fly line that you're going to fish one end of the fly line more than the other.
Right.
So let's say you wear that end of the fly line out. The double taper, you can flip it around and fish the other end for a year or two.
You can use the part that you had tied to the backing and
fish that end.
Right.
What they do with a weight forward line is they take the body that those tapers are on either end of it, and they move it forward, putting a lot of the weight towards the front of the fly line. And then they'll get fancy with the various tapers that they'll do on either end. So the rest of the line is what they would call running line.
Right.
So when you cast out, you've got the majority of the weight towards the front of the line, and then everything back beyond that back taper is what they call running line.
Yeah.
And that's just a level line on the back end of it. So again, the advantage of a weight forward line is tighter loops, more distance, plows through wind better.
Right.
Lacks some of the finesse that a double taper would have. So presentation may be sacrificed a little bit.
Right.
Also, if you're throwing big flies, a weight forward line would be good. But I think we've always stuck with the fact for a beginner, a double taper is a good way to go. It's more economical. You can get probably twice the life out of it.
Right.
And it presents well. It actually has more of the body in the water. So if you're mending and doing stuff like that, it mends nicer than a weight forward line. So I think for someone who's just starting out, it's a good...
Yeah, a double taper would be a good choice.
Good way to start. So So we're up to... So we're
rod, reel, and line.
Rod, reel, and line. So 5-weight, 2-piece fly rod, medium action, standard, best bang for your buck reel. Not too particular. And then a double taper.
Yeah, just a single action reel.
Okay, so while we're talking about fly line, we have to mention backing.
Yeah.
So you're going to need some backing on your reel. Yeah. There's 2 types of backing out there. You get Dacron
Yeah.
And then gel spun is another one.
Yeah.
And I think Dacron's the most common. That's what
I've
have
never
on-
used. The only thing I've used is Dacron.
Yeah. And I think that's like a proprietary
Yeah.
name, but I think DuPont had developed it. It's a
Yeah.
braided.
I know Cortland is a name that you always see in backing. It was fly lines too, but there's such a wide market now in fly lines that
Scientific Anglers make some good stuff.
Rio and there's
Rio.
a lot of Orvis. They all make fly line. So
yeah, so we use Rio now. We've used
Cortland was the mainstay 40 years ago. Cortland 444, the peach colored line, double taper was the mainstay.
You've used some Orvis.
Yeah.
You remember the Wonder line?
Yeah,
You'd
that
use
was a lot of years ago. That was 30 years ago.
You didn't care for that.
No, I seem to have a lot of memory.
A lot of memory.
Yeah.
And what the memory means is anytime the line's on the reel, the minute you take it off the reel,
stays in the coils.
You want it to just loosen up.
Right.
And just be, go wherever. Not be conformed to a coil. If it's coiled on your reel, you strip it off and it stays coiled at your feet.
Yeah.
It's going to inhibit how it casts and it can cause a mess. And you'll find that different fly lines have varying degrees of memory.
Yeah. The less the better.
Yeah. Also, toughness of the fly line.
Yeah.
Which always seems to be balanced with, you've got some fly lines out there that, there's like shark skin.
Right.
And some other more marketing stuff, I think, more than anything.
Yeah.
The problem with those that I found was they were durable, but they were very textured and they picked up a lot of dirt.
Right.
Which then affects how the line casts.
Right.
But they were supposed to be durable. So for fly line, Rio's a good one. But whatever, if you get an outfit or something like that, they'll have probably an intermediate, fly line. That's
middle of the road fly line. Yeah.
But definitely go double taper.
And you didn't mention, but backing there again is you build up the arbor of your reel, and it helps with the memory of the, getting rid of the memory of your fly line, and helps you with the retrieve too. And when you reel in your line, there's fewer rotations to get your fly line on the reel. And
that's where the two types of backing that are on the market that I'm familiar with, the Dacron versus the gel spun, that's kind of where they differ. As far as the gel spun is thinner, so if you need more backing, if you're catching fish that are going to run and you're going to bring into the backing a lot, gel spun you can fit more on a reel.
Yeah.
As far as backings, we never get to the backing unless we're trolling.
We do, in trolling once in a while. Certainly not our trout fishing, our fly fishing.
No, even catching, an 18, 19-inch brook trout. Brook trout don't strip a lot of line.
No.
They don't make big runs.
No.
Like a big salmon would or a pike.
Right.
Even catching pike's a lot of fun on a fly rod. So then you're going to need some decent leader. And we both fish fluorocarbon leaders, which is a little pricier nowadays.
It is.
You're looking at, we use basically a set tapered leader.
Yeah.
So back in the day used to make.
I've tried it. Yeah. I used to make them and stuff and tie my own tapered leaders and stuff. And I haven't done that in a while. Although I do switch tippets, I oftentimes will.
Well, that's a cost saving measure.
Yeah. Rather than throwing the entire fly line away or whatever, I'll just switch the last 18.
Well, the entire leader, you mean?
Right.
Yeah.
I'll just switch the
So you're looking at, fluorocarbon leaders, they're about $5 a pop.
Yeah.
I want to say a 3-pack costs anywhere from $12 to $15.
Yeah.
And you'll see leaders come in 7.5, 9 foot.
Yeah.
It's probably the most common. We use 9 foot.
Yeah.
And then you'll see 4X for tippet size, 3X, 5X.
Yeah.
We use 4X.
Yeah.
So 4X just, again, is going to be the size of the smallest part of that leader. The higher the number, so when you go 5X, it's even smaller.
The smaller the poundage.
And the smaller the poundage.
Right.
So a good all-around leader's a 4X tippet. It's stout enough that you can cast some pretty good size flies, size 12, maybe get away with a size 10 dry fly. But you can also get down small enough to 16,
Right.
around there, which is good for northern Maine. Those are good sizes for northern Maine.
Right.
And they're going to be about 5 or 6 pound tests.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly, depending on what knots you use.
Right.
Or if you have any wind knots.
Yeah.
Stuff like that in them. That can change the break point of the tippet material. 4X tippet, that's a good size. You may want to start with a 7.5 foot.
Yeah,
leader.
a little easier to cast, the shorter the leader.
Easier to manage.
Yeah.
But definitely get tippet material. So once you change flies half dozen times or whatever, you're going to chew into the front of
the tippet,
your leader, and you'll find it'll start to get thicker and thicker and thicker.
Mm-hmm.
Once you get 18 inches down or so, tie on another section of tippet. I carry spools of 4X tippet. I can get a lot of life out of a
fly line,
out of a single piece of leader.
Yeah, fly leader. Excuse
over the
me.
course of a summer.
Yeah,
just by tying on new tippet material.
Yeah.
If I get a wind knot or something like that, cut it out and tie in a new section on the front of it. So we got 2-piece fly rod, 5-weight line, double taper, and 4X tippet.
Yeah.
So good place to start. So on to flies. You don't need every fly under the sun.
No.
For northern Maine, what's our go-to?
Number 12 Adams.
Dry fly fishing.
If we're dry fly fishing the ponds or the rivers or whatever, it's hard to beat an Adams in a size 12.
Yeah. And when I'm going on the water, that's usually my starting point.
Yeah.
Unless I see something else coming off.
The
important 3 things when dry fly fishing is, size, shape, and color.
Right.
Size being most important.
Yeah, silhouette shape.
So matching the size of whatever flies are hatching or whatever the fish are taking.
Whether it's a mayfly or a caddis
And then you get into shape because caddis flies.
Yeah.
A little different silhouette than a typical mayfly. Like some of the river here in town has excellent caddisfly hatches.
Yeah.
And you will find that when there's a good hatch of something like that, the trout will really hone in.
Yeah,
on that particular.
There's one in particular, and I haven't fished it in a few years, but I used to. Is the trichorothodes.
Yeah,
they call it a trico.
That's when you're getting into size 20,
and that's
22,
22s,
24.
Yeah. But boy, you can have some really good fishing, and you have got to match that pretty close. They get very selective.
And that's a mid-morning hatch.
Yep.
Like a 9 or 10 o'clock.
It tends to start in the 1st of August, maybe late July and the 1st of August. And you're right, it's mid-morning. It's like 10:30 in the morning that those come off, and they come off in big numbers.
Yeah, and they're just a little tiny.
Oh, they're small.
Tiny flies. So that's something that's more specific. You'd have to get, you're looking at small tippets.
Right.
Small flies.
Right.
And they'd be pretty specific to those flies. But so size 12 Adams, usually what I'm starting with. And then I may switch, depending if I see caddis coming off the water. And fish will chase caddis different than they take a mayfly.
Yeah.
Caddis kind of skitter across the water.
They do.
And so that can be a tip that, hey, they're taking caddis as opposed to mayflies.
Elk hair caddis is
that's probably
a good imitation and common fly. Elk hair caddis.
That would be another one that I keep.
Number 12 again, maybe 14 would be then you throw in maybe some nymphs, a hare's ear nymph or a pheasant tail or something like that would be.
Hare's ear is probably the most common.
That's.
But nymph fishing can be a whole nother ball game. I don't do it nearly as much as I should.
No.
Fish's diet is 90% subsurface?
Underwater. Yeah.
So
under the surface.
And I love dry fly fishing.
Yeah, we prefer if we're gonna fly fish, and most people are, they prefer to use dry flies. Yeah. It's a visual game, more of a visual game, and
especially a big trout.
Yeah,
that gets you.
Yeah, when he
or
comes
a big
up,
salmon, any of them, it gets the blood pumping. When you see him come up to the surface and take a dry fly, and then throw in a few streamers.
Yep.
Mickey Finn.
Mickey Finn
is
for brook trout.
just
To
a
me,
tractor
that's-
pattern.
Yeah. Yeah. Red and yellow.
Yeah. So, I mean, you
But,
can basically do it one fly box,
Yeah.
throw it in your pocket. You don't need a vest. You don't need
Yeah.
all the lanyards and everything else that's out there.
No. Sometimes all that stuff's a hindrance anyway.
It
You're
is. I've
you're-
got a fly vest.
You're better off to go light. So
I'm still using an Orvis fly vest that has about 3,000 pockets in it.
Yeah.
And I've got something in every
I was
pocket.
going to say we got something in every one.
I probably never opened the pocket all season long.
Yeah.
You accumulate stuff over the years.
Yeah.
You start out thinking you need it.
Yeah. Well,
and then you realize that
they tell us we need it.
that's the thing.
The companies, when they market this stuff, they tell us we need it, and they,
Yeah, and don't ever let someone tell you need to do it this way or you need to use this. You kind of figure out stuff that works for you, things that you like.
yeah. And the best way would be obviously to go with somebody who is
who's
experienced in it, and they've done it a long time, and they know what to use, and
Can put you over fish.
yeah, and they'll get you a big head start on casting. You know,
And a lot of the places we fish here in northern Maine, they're low pressure.
right?
It doesn't take a whole lot of skill to catch a
No, the fish
on
can
a fly
be.
rod.
They're not very selective most
A lot
of
of
the
fly
time.
fishing only ponds.
Yeah,
So yeah, it definitely does not have to be overcomplicated. It's doesn't have to be gear oriented. Definitely doesn't need to be stuffy. I think a
No.
lot of fly fishermen and a lot of people view fly fishing as
kind of elitist.
yeah, only catch and release, only it really shouldn't be that way at all.
It's fun.
It is fun.
And don't take the fun out of it.
No, it doesn't need to be expensive.
No.
Don't overcomplicate it. Don't get caught up in all the hype with that stuff.
Yeah.
There's any other things you can think of that?
Well, yeah, you could get in there again, Paul. There's so much equipment. We have it all. We have you get into waders and
You can get into that starts to be more of a convenience. So
Yeah.
I mean, I used to just wade in the brook.
yeah.
Just jump in the water.
Yeah, certainly growing up, I didn't have waders. And eventually, if you like it, and you'll eventually have that stuff, you'll want it. You'll buy it.
What I do is, I build my own fly rods, so I can build a top of the line fly rod for like half the price.
It's still a lot of money.
It is. You're gonna
$500.
drop $500 just for the blank.
Yeah.
If you're gonna get a top of the line blank.
Yeah.
But I put nicer components than those companies put on their fly rods
Right.
that you buy commercially.
And we tie our own flies.
Dye your own flies.
And there's no savings in that either.
There's not, but there's a sense of satisfaction.
There certainly is a satisfaction component to it,
comes
but not a savings. You're not going to.
No.
But I certainly would suggest anybody that gets into fly fishing and really likes it to tie their own flies.
Well, and here's the the advantage of that. Sometimes you'll be fishing a body of water, and you might notice something unique about a species of insect coming off that water. Maybe they're a slightly different color.
Yeah.
You've got the convenience of going home and customizing it to exactly what you saw that those fish were taking.
Yeah.
You can. I mean, I've even gone so far as take a marker and darken up a fly.
Yeah.
If there's,
Yeah.
you can really customize stuff without having to find something commercially available.
Right.
Just do it at your bench at home, and then you go out and catch a fish, and it feels pretty friggin' good when you do it.
Yeah.
It was something you did all on your own. Another thing that, that'd be a good recommendation is understanding just a few basic knots. Maybe get a book on knots, because you got to know how to tie your backing.
Leader.
Well, your backing to the reel.
Yeah.
Then your fly line to the backing.
Yeah.
And then your fly line to the leader, which usually nowadays is loop-to-loop connection.
Right.
Most fly lines are coming with a built-in loop. And then tippet material.
Right.
And then your tippet to the fly. And they're all actually different knots.
Yep.
Arbor knot to the reel.
Yeah.
Albright knot the backing to the fly line.
See, I use a nail knot.
And you can use, I mean, there's no
nail knot to backing and a nail knot from fly line to leader.
The advantage with a nail knot is it's a very sleek knot.
Goes through the eyes
if
or
you
whatever.
Need it to go through the eyes, it goes through nicely.
It does go through good.
Nowadays, when you get to the fly line, most fly lines come with a loop.
Yeah.
And then your leader has a loop, and you can just do a loop-to-loop connection. Makes it quick in the field to change those out, especially if it's low light. And the fisher jump in, you get a little anxiety because you want to swap out a leader real quick.
You don't want to be spending.
You
don't want to be spending 15 minutes or whatever trying to do a nail knot. You're getting chewed by mosquitoes.
You got a big trout rising in front of you, and you're trying to.
Yeah, in low light. I couldn't do it in the light.
So loop to loop comes in handy.
Yeah.
Then a blood knot for tippet material to.
Yeah, and that's a tricky knot. That'll take some practice.
Surgeon's knot you can use. It's a little bit easier. I don't like a surgeon's knot.
Yeah.
I like using a blood knot. They also call it a barrel knot.
Barrel knot, yeah.
And then a clinch knot.
For the fly.
Or modified clinch.
Leader to fly.
Yeah. Some people use a turl knot. That's a little more complicated.
Yeah.
I don't want to spend I never have a problem with the clinch knot. So it's pretty quick and easy. And when I'm in the field, I don't want to spend time frigging with a complicated knot. So yeah, a good book of knots is another good.
And they will take a little. You're not going to just sit down and tie those knots. They do take a little practice, and but it's all part of the fun of learning how to fly fish. You learn the knots, and
I'm sure there's some good YouTube videos on all those knots.
I'm sure there is. So
I think is that our beginner setup?
Yeah, that'll get somebody. Yeah,
I hope so. Like I said, someone asked, if we could go over some just beginning gear or some beginner's gear. And that's basically what I would use. 5-weight fly rod, 2-piece, medium action, double taper fly line.
Right.
And good fluorocarbon leader, handful of flies, and a good spirit. And
find somebody. I think it would be.
You're right.
I think a really good thing is to find, and usually fly fishermen, they're more than willing to help you out and
they are,
and get you started and show you the ropes and
even
maybe even take you to one of their prime spots.
Even on the water, when you see another fly fisherman, they tend to be pretty open. Not very secretive.
No,
and they want to talk.
They want to help out somebody, especially if somebody is just getting started, and they want to make you enjoy the experience. They don't want to make you suffer through the learning experience. So
and this world is right full of all kinds of resources now to learn this stuff.
Yeah, I got a story to tell you on that, Paul, and I think I've told you it. I was playing softball with a guy, and he loved to fish, and he was a bait fisherman, a spin fisherman. And so I took him to the Presteel down in Westfield.
That used to be really good.
We fished it. I haven't fished it in a lot of years.
That was in Field and Stream in the 70s.
Yeah.
I had an article on that.
Yeah. Anyway, we get down there, and he, and this is a fly fishing stream, and there's a lot of trout in it. And I stayed in one spot, and I can't remember if the limit was 5 or 10, but I literally stayed in one spot where we parked, and he waded upstream. And he came back and he didn't have a fish. And I had a limit of fish.
Yeah.
So, and you fast forward, I didn't see the guy for a lot of years later. And he comes up, I go up to the same spot and he's there and he looks like he just fell off the Orvis magazine.
Okay.
Yeah. He had all the gear.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That was a fertile stream.
It was.
I haven't been there in quite a few years. And I remember one night fishing it. I just gave up fishing and watched. There was such a hatch of mayflies coming off the water.
Yeah.
It was just, the surface of the water was peppered with these white-bellied mayflies. And I can remember thinking, I was casting my fly out there, and it's sitting in like dozens of mayflies. And I'm like, what are the odds of the fish taking my fly?
Right, yeah.
And I just sat there. We caught some beautiful fish that night, fat, football-shaped.
Yeah.
But I remember sitting there going, I'll just watch the show because I don't have a chance in heck.
I think they they consider that a limestone stream.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think so.
I think it's very fertile with insect activity and stuff, and the trout grow good. And
That was probably one of the
there's-
best hatches I've
yeah.
ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
That was crazy. And the fish were
yeah,
healthy.
yeah.
They were healthy fish.
Can you imagine that stream back in the day before all the agriculture and the
A lot of farmers.
Yeah.
And
it's been abused.
not to rag on farmers, but one of our
Yeah,
honey holes there, it was a spring hole, went back one year and there was
Yeah.
an irrigation pump.
right down
Platform built out into the
Yeah.
stream, right into the
Yeah, yeah.
right into that hole. Ruined
Yeah.
that hole.
And there's a lot of runoff, like I say. The land, the entire length of that stream is so cultivated now
Yeah.
and stuff. It's
Changes
water quality is nothing like I'm sure it used to be back in
changes the habitat.
yeah,
back down.
for sure. So
So yeah. So like I said, someone asked if we'd go over that and figured, yeah, sure.
yeah,
Why not? We'll share.
yeah,
You taught me, so I had to be
yeah, yeah. And you'll be teaching.
I'll do the same thing with my kids.
Yeah, yeah. Lydia's actually mentioned that she's wanted to go. fly
She
fishing.
has. I've got her.
Yeah,
She's been out fly fishing. She's pretty good.
yeah.
She casts pretty good. First,
Yeah, she said she hasn't gone this year. She just
She
mentioned
hasn't.
to
We're
me
gonna.
a few weeks ago
we're heading
that
up camping here.
she would like to go. So
We're heading up
Yeah.
here in
in a
Well,
few days.
beginning of August.
Yeah.
We'll go out fishing. Isn't really good that time of year, but
Yeah.
kids don't care.
No, she
As long as
can
we catch something.
like I say,
Chub,
just
perch.
the activity itself, just learning how to cast and stuff will be.
We were talking the other day, so fishing's kind of winding down, at least for us, dry fly fishing. We were talking, you start getting the fever for a little bit of preseason scouting, or at least putting some cameras out.
Yeah.
Deer
The
hunting
days are
wise.
getting shorter.
They are.
Although
Not
yeah,
quite noticeable
It
yet,
hasn't
but
cooled
we
down
know.
any, but the days are getting shorter.
Yeah, so we
And
were
I
talking-
did see, I met today, Paul, and one of the signs along the road, I'm starting to see some goldenrod, which is
Okay.
the end of the summer,
Yeah.
the goldenrod.
So we'll be getting some trail cams out here.
Yeah.
You've got one out already.
I got one out.
You haven't checked it.
I haven't checked it at all. I'm trying to think when I put it out, Paul. I think it was May.
We'll
I put it out in May,
have
so
to go take a
it's
look.
been a while. So
I've got a little buck running around the house.
oh, you do?
Yeah, he's actually Bo and I were mowing down the back part of the lawn here, and he
Yeah.
ran right out in front of us, right across the
yeah,
yard in front of us. Bo was like, "Dad, deer."
yeah.
I'm like, yeah, it's nice to see. So, well, I hope
Yeah.
someone finds that helpful. And
Yeah.
wasn't overcomplicated. Wasn't because you can really. I start talking fishing gear. I can really.
Yeah, there's a lot
you
of
can
it
get
out
down
there.
some rabbit holes
Yeah, and
on that stuff.
you know,
that isn't really practical to most people,
and
or
so
probably
much,
most people wouldn't care about.
so much too, Paul, is dependent on what you fish for. I mean, some people
Yeah.
fish for bass, and some people fish for. You may want a little bigger outfit for bass, a 6 or 7 weight if you were fishing for
Yeah.
bass, and there's a lot of different fish you can fish for. We're talking trout, we're talking brook trout and stuff. So
Yeah.
northern Maine.
More important, just do it,
Yeah,
and you'll figure it out along the way.
yeah,
Talk to people, find someone who knows.
yeah.
Go
Well,
with them.
I was going to say read, but now it's YouTube. Anybody can get on YouTube
Yeah.
and you can find out just about anything about any subject, and
Yeah.
yeah,
Hopefully, most of it would be right.
yeah,
Not
right.
always.
Most of it would be, Paul.
Yeah.
Most of it would
As
be
li-
good. Most of it would be good information there.
Use a few sources. If they
Yeah.
all kind of say the same thing, then you can
You know
probably guarantee that
Yeah, you know that they're good.
it's accurate information. If you can get 3 people kind of with the same conclusion on something,
Yeah,
same advice, and it's probably good advice.
yeah,
So I guess that just about sums it up.
yep.
So you made it this far. Thanks for watching. Until next time, get outside.
It's good for the soul.
See ya.